Thank you for joining us today, early this morning. We are so excited to have you here. My name is Kayla Williams. I'm a new member of DC Young and Powerful Group. It's a group of young professionals here in DC that are looking to get civically engaged and also engaged in the political process. Today, I would like to introduce to you our moderator, Anthony Beckham. Anthony has also served in Chicago's Young and Powerful Group and has done a multitude of community service roles and projects. So I'll just pass it off to Anthony. I hope you guys enjoy this panel that we have today. We're looking to talk about public engagement, civic engagement, voting rights, and all of the above. Thank you, guys.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, there we go. A little energy. I am Anthony Beckham. I am from Chicago, Illinois, and I served on Young and Powerful from 2008 to 2012, which was a very critical year for Young and Powerful and for our country. We helped President Barack Obama become president, and we did simultaneously in about 7 states fundraisers at the same time on the same date. And so now I currently work for Cook County Commissioner Richard R. Boykin. And before working for Cook County Commissioner Richard Boykin, I worked for Congresswoman Robin Kelly from Illinois as well, who's a congressperson. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start off by doing introductions of everyone. And we're going to first start off with Ms. Wanda Durant.
Good morning.
Good morning. Wanda Durant, lovely known as Mama Durant, the real MVP, is a strong leader, advocate, and philanthropist. Uh-oh, passcode. It's always critical. Whose passion is to help single mothers, women, and children. She is the mother of 2 sons, businessmen Anthony Tony Durant and NBA star Kevin Durant of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Today, she travels the country as an inspirational speaker, sharing her life experience with women of all ages, single mothers, and children. As a businesswoman and champion of many causes, Wanda lends support to the Kevin Durant Charity Foundation, the Tony Durant Reach Higher Foundation, Community Kinship Coalition, Single Parents Network, Baller Moms, Positive Tomorrows, amongst others. It is Wanda's passion to guide her audience to realize the hope is all alive inside of them, encourage them to dream, and help them truly believe they can achieve the future that they want. So let's all clap it up for Miss Mama Durant.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Next is Mr. Gregory Jackson, Jr. After graduating from the University of Virginia, Gregory spent 2.5 years working as an organizational management and policy consultant for the government agencies throughout the DC metropolitan area, such as the Federal Emergency Management Agency, better known as FEMA, the Department of Defense, the U.S. Postal Service, and the U.S. Army. Gregory has a lot of things we could say about him, but we're going to cut it a little short so we can move down. So everybody clap. Next is Ms. Rochelle Bent. Rochelle?
Yeah.
All right. Rochelle is an advisory neighborhood commissioner and chair of the ANC 7E. She has worked on all aspects of civic engagement. As a commissioner, Rochelle convenes public meetings to address a wide range of policies and programs affecting the Southeast District of Columbia. Everyone clap it up for her. Next is Ms. Bacarra Mauldin. Mauldin, okay, sorry about that. Bacarra is a native of Birmingham, Alabama, Chief Service Officer for the City of Birmingham. In this position, she is responsible for the implementation of the Mayor's Civic Engagement Strategy and the management of the Mayor's Civic Engagement Team. Clap it up for her as well. And so we're going to start now the panel discussion. Yes. Heather. Heather Foster. Where's Heather?
Right here.
All right. Sorry about the Heather. Heather is a thought leader, consultant, and writer dedicated to motivating people of color to participate in civic engagement. She recently served as both Associate Director of Advisory in the White House Office of Public Engagement. During her 4-year tenure, she managed all of the President's meetings, speeches with the African American and served as his liaison to civil rights leaders. So everyone clap it up for her as well. And so really, I'm going to make this open, and we can ask some questions for everyone. But I think we should allow the panelists to say something before we start. So we're going to start off with Mr. Durant, and then we'll work our way down the table.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I would like to say about this subject that we're talking about today is that it's something that was dear to my family. Voting and being involved in the community was something that I learned from my grandparents and my mother and my uncles and aunts, and they were very active in our local community. And they taught us the importance of being involved. They taught us the importance of being able to make the decisions that affect our community and affect our lives. And so that's why I've taken on the responsibility of keeping our family legacy alive, to be involved in the political process locally and nationally, and to help young people to do the same thing.
Morning. Come on, we had a good night last night. I need a little energy. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. How about you with the hat? Yeah.
All right.
He had a good night too. So I'm Greg Jackson. I currently serve as the National Field Director with a super PAC called For Our Future. But prior to that, I was Barack Obama's State Field Director in North Carolina. And I served as a National Field Director with the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And I guess through all those different journeys, I've just learned how extremely important voting is, and how powerful we are as a community, and unfortunately how little we're using that power. In North Carolina, we registered over 380,000 African Americans over the course of 4 months, and we simply ran out of time. Like, it wasn't like we stopped because we didn't find any more voters. We just ran out of time to register people to vote. And in a state that was only won by, I think, 120,000 votes, and we brought almost, over a quarter of a million votes to the table. It was something I knew was powerful. I know it's something that is huge all over the country. We did some work, when I was with the DCCC, we did some work in some districts in California where there was upwards of 40% of the electorate were unregistered. And these are minorities. These are African Americans, Latinos, youth, millennials, that are just totally tuned out of the entire process, but literally could change the entire direction of every race and election that we participate and see on TV every day. So this is something I'm extremely passionate about. I've been doing this for a long time, and I think if nothing else, getting people engaged to register to vote is not rocket science. It typically is just connecting with folks where they are, and we're simply failing as a country right now. So I'm excited to talk about it. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to be here. Very excited to speak with you all this morning. I was about to say afternoon. Day 2 of CBC. So I, have had about 10 years in public service and have done everything from local campaigns to national presidential elections, and most recently serving in the White House, which was an extreme honor, but it was also a very difficult job. Part of my job was to really connect directly with the community on behalf of the president, because quite often he cannot be everywhere, although he tries to be out as much as possible. And it was an amazing job, but it made me also realize what Greg was saying is that our political power is strong in this country, and it could be really impactful on moving a lot of the issues that we care so much about. But quite often, we don't take advantage of it. And I've seen everything from school board races that can affect the policy that we work on here in DC to our national campaigns. And we need to keep pushing. People are so inspired, they're still fired up. But we've heard in this current election cycle that there's an enthusiasm gap. And I keep hearing it more and more. I've heard it this week. And it's something that's got to turn around, because we have to stay engaged and we have to keep fighting.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm super excited to be here. I chose to run for the Advisory Neighborhood Commission seat in DC and Southeast. I'm actually a native of the Bronx in New York, and I really loved my neighborhood, but I didn't love as much what I saw when I walked down the block. And it was more important for me to understand why I saw blight. Like, I saw a litter on the street, or I saw just some sidewalks were not broke. Some sidewalks were broken, and it was important for me to understand why. So I would go to my community meetings, and from that stage, I got more engaged, and I decided to run for Advisory Neighborhood Commission. And I'm now the chair of that commission, and it's been a very colorful experience a lot of politics is local, and learning how to understand just what makes a street in a community, like a street built into a community is, there's a lot of mechanics behind it that you don't typically understand once you see a business pop up into an area. It's a long conversation that happens from before that business gets to that area. And I want to keep that conversation going and get more people my age that are in those community meetings to participate and engage. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to see everyone come out from last night and just talk about this.
Got it.
Oh, it's my very own mic. Nice.
Greetings, everyone. I am Bacarra Sanderson-Mauldin. I am the Chief Service Officer for the City of Birmingham, as you heard in my bio. And being from Birmingham, Alabama, and I am a baby of the 70s, I'm just less than 10 years removed from the civil rights movement of the 1960s. So as you can imagine, civic engagement, getting out to vote, being a part of your community, being a part of the solution, that was in my formula when I was a baby, being in Birmingham. And so it is very important, we learned at an early age, it is very important to get out and make your community whatever you want it to be. And a part of doing that is getting out and voting. Voting impacts so many things, and it's a cause that I'm very passionate about it. I am fortunate, under the leadership of the Honorable Mayor William A. Bell Sr. for the City of Birmingham, to basically professionally combine something that has been a passion my whole life. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to talk to each of you all and hear your feedback as well about what we can do to really energize our society and make a difference. Thank you.
Now, before we let the next young man introduce himself, I didn't get the memo, man. I didn't know we could wear gym shoes. I'd have wore my shoes.
It's part of my uniform.
There you go. This is Rashard Drake. Rashard is a Hampton University alumni. Began his career with Revolt TV, a multi-platinum network founded by Sean Diddy Combs as Director of Integrated Marketing.
Hey, how's everyone? I promise I'm not late because I was at Saks last night. So yeah, my name is Rashard Drake. I head up content development at Revolt TV, which is a multi-platform TV network started by Sean Diddy Combs. Before that, I worked in other marketing partnership organizations, but previously I worked in the Obama administration under Secretary Chu as trip director, and I worked on the 2008 campaign as HBCU outreach coordinator. And did a lot of work locally. I'm from Queens, New York. I heard someone say the Bronx, so much respect. And so with Revolt TV, we just launched a campaign a few months ago called Revolt to Vote. And the idea behind that is really, for the lack of better words, dumbing down the election for everyday folks, young people in particular, to be educated, aware, and excited about this election. And so, you know, our role is really just to tell the stories behind the campaign, behind the issues, like breaking down earlier, like what a delegate was. Like a lot of people just didn't understand the difference between a delegate and a superdelegate. So just having people understand just the basic level of how our political system works. And I think, you know, someone was mentioning, you know, how politics is local. I think one of the things that we constantly miss out year after year, cycle after cycle, is that, you know, voting for your count, like when we look at Daniel Pantaleo, who was a police officer that killed Eric Gardner, the fact that he just got a raise, is now making $120,000 a year for the NYPD, like that's a local issue. That's your district attorney, that's your council members, that's your mayor. So we have to make sure that people are coming out and voting in those elections just as much as our presidential elections. So we're really committed to telling those stories year in and year out.
Thank you, thank you. So let's clap it up for everyone, first of all. Thank you, everyone. And I'm gonna kind of take this out of order, and Kayla, don't kill me, but there's a conversation and a serious issue in a lot of communities of color, and that conversation is gun violence. In Chicago alone, this year, we've had 3,000 people shot and over 365 people killed. And we still have 4 more months to go in the year. How do we make sure that we tie this conversation into the agendas of those who are running for president, your legislators, and then people in the community? because it's so important, because quite frankly, what we're seeing is genocide in our community, and we're losing a lot of young African-American talent. So I would like to start off with Ms. Durant.
Well, I think it's a trickle up and trickle down effect that needs to take place to help curb the violence. Sometimes when I'm out speaking across the country, I talk to single parents, mothers and fathers, and some of the things that they talk about are the opportunities that are available to them. And some of them, the demographic that I speak to, they're single parents, they're single fathers, they're teenagers, they've been in trouble, they've had trouble with the court systems, and so they feel like because they haven't continued on the right track that there are not opportunities for them. And so what we need to do, or what I think we should do as the community, is we need to make them more engaged in the process, because once they feel hopeful, and a lot of them just don't feel hopeful, they feel that the older generation really doesn't care about the things that they're confronted with, their communities, their environment. And that's the young lady was saying, when you walk down the street from where I live now and where I currently live, you can see the difference in the values of the community. And I don't just think it's the neighborhood, but I just think that people are just so weighed down and pressed down. And so I think that's the issue, that we need to really focus on the things that's going to help them be a valuable part of society.
Thank you, Mr. Durant. Anyone else want to chime in?
I will. In Birmingham, with the civic engagement team, we actually partner with Birmingham's Homicide Division for a program called the Violence Reduction Initiative. And as a part of that program, I've actually had the opportunity to go into the homes of people that, and you know, we have data and whatnot, and so people that are more likely to get in trouble or be the next victim or the next perpetrator, to try to stop the cycle. And what we are finding is that a lot of these young men and women, they feel like they've gotten into this lifestyle and they feel like they can't get out. They just feel like society will not let them out, or that they can't make it. And so what we need to do as a community is work with our elected officials to develop more programs to give these members of society a way out, to make them feel like and know that there is opportunity on the other side. And I think that's where a lot of that cycle comes from, is they just don't feel like they have any other options.
Absolutely.
So, just in all transparency, so personally, I'm actually a survivor of gun violence. In 2013, I was shot in a drive-by as an innocent bystander. And I'll never forget, people kept asking, are you upset? You know, did they arrest that man? And I was like, look, this wasn't my altercation. Like, I don't feel any type of real tension with that person. And after that experience, I worked on gun violence with Organizing for America, and then most recently with our mayor. And I'll never forget, the mayor and I in DC, this is in Southeast, we went to a home where a shooting had happened, and I gotta share this with you because I think it illuminates a lot to what the problem is. But there was a 13-year-old who was out playing, and some 16-year-old was bullying him, so he grabbed a rock and threw it at the 16-year-old. The 16-year-old pulled a gun out on him. So he ran to his mom, as any kid would, right? You're 13 years old. Mom came, went to her house, got her gun, and she pulled her gun out on him, and a shootout happened. The mother was killed, the 16-year-old was shot, the 13-year-old was shot in a playground that they've all lived on, you know, for 3-4 years. And a couple things that hit me. One, when we walked into that community with the mayor, I mean, the mayor was struggling to keep it together, but the community was going on business as usual. This was something that happens in their environment every day. And I think that's telling to what folks are dealing with every day, and they have that feeling of being trapped and not seeing a way out. The second thing was, you know, in a community where I know the income level could not be over $40,000 per household, how can 2 guns pop up, right? Like, how is that even possible? And I think a big problem with gun violence that, you know, unfortunately in the African American community, we kind of skate around it. What's jobs? These people got hope. They need this. They in the system. But in reality, there are a lot of guns in our streets, and we've got to figure out how to get them off our streets. And that's going to take some serious political power. I think that's where civic engagement is going to be huge. But there's some real things that can be done. When I was shot, the person shot 12 times. That means he had a high-capacity magazine. That can be banned. You don't need a high-capacity magazine to self-defense. You don't need a high-capacity magazine to go hunting if you're an NRA member. So I think there are very specific things like background checks, banning high-capacity magazines, assault rifles, pure, clear legislation that we can move on and push forward to continue this conversation. One thing I will say, though, I'm excited about is, if you guys have not noticed, I do feel like gun violence is something we've heard about in the presidential debates and the discussion, and unfortunately it's come from the shootings in Orlando and beyond. But I do think now it's a part of the narrative where, if you look at 2012, 2008, the shootings and the murders was just as high. But it was not something that was being debated and discussed, and presidential candidates were forced to take sides on. So I think the discussion is there, the opportunity is there, but now we need to be very vocal about what changes we want to see, and start pushing on those, pushing our local electeds. Everybody you turn up with at the next reception, you need to just ask them that question. Hey, you're the chief of staff for so-and-so's office. What are you guys doing about gun violence? What are you doing about gun violence? What are you doing about urban violence? Because the opportunity is there. We just have to kind of push that discussion forward.
I think Rashard wanted to chime in.
Yeah, just to play, I'm not gonna say devil's advocate, but I think, it is a hopelessness gap, right? I live in Brooklyn, New York. I could walk down the street, probably get a gun fairly quickly in Crown Heights. But, the access, I don't think that's gonna, I honestly don't think that's a change. You can have the strongest gun laws in New York City, but if someone's coming from Virginia and North Carolina and bringing guns in, but the fact of the matter is, I'm not gonna buy a gun because I have something to lose. I have a job. I have people that care about me. I have a support system. So I think there is a hopelessness gap that we have to fill. Revolt, we did a 2.5-hour special called Chicago Love, where we went to Chicago and we were very clear in our intentions. We saw the Vice special where they glamorized the killing in Chicago. We said, we're not going to do that. We're going to spend our time kind of talking about the violence, but we spent the majority of our documentary talking about the people that are coming up with solutions, and talking to people on the ground, like folks like Rhymefest and a lot of the artist community in particular, that's really on the front lines of trying to close that gap. And what we're finding is, to break it down, there was a time where if you were in different gangs, you were in different parts of the town. They destroyed those projects. They closed the different schools, and so now you had 13-year-old kids deciding, do I want to walk through 3 different gang territories to get to a classroom where a teacher doesn't care about me, and where I have to walk into a school that looks like a prison, with outdated books, with no food in my stomach. So these are 13, 12-year-old kids that are making these decisions. And then then you have the lean epidemic. There are kids that are drinking lean just to deal with just to cope with the pain that they're dealing with because of the situations that they're in. So we have to deal with all of that. I think that will end the gun violence that we see.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next question. Do you think that today in 2016, every American can actually experience and participate and realize the benefits of a full democracy? Anyone can jump in.
No.
I didn't want to say it.
Yeah, I say no, and I'm gonna be honest. I don't think it's unfortunately, I think it's strategic and it's political in itself.
Yes.
And so, through the campaign work we've done, we saw in North Carolina they introduced a voter ID law, where we knew that of the African American community, especially in rural Northeast North Carolina, a lot of these folks don't have a driver's license, they don't have an ID, and they don't have the resources to go get them, and maybe they do have the resources to go get them, but what do they need them for other than voting? And if voting is already something that's under prioritized, why would they go through all those hoops? So I think in that state alone, we anticipated, I think, around 20-30% of the African Americans in the state would probably not vote because of this one simple voting tax, if you will, that you have to go out and purchase an ID. In states like Texas, you have to register by October 11th for an election on November 8th. That's a full month. And in order to be registered, you have to be registered either by someone who's already certified or at a certified location. There's only one location per county. And if you want to become certified to register somebody to vote, you got to go through a training, get certified, and there's only one training per month, just so you can register your neighbor. So there's all these hoops where, if you're somebody who's honestly just underprivileged or just not prioritizing, which we see a lot of voters are, a lot of people of color are, these little small hoops that sound small in writing, sound small in the news, make a really huge difference to people all over the country.
Bacarra?
Well, my answer is no as well, but then it's also, you might be able to realize or the benefits of a democracy. The key actually is getting engaged. I mean, my uncle was 3 steps behind Congressman Lewis on the bridge in Selma. And some of the things that they tell us about what they used to go through in order to be able to vote back then sounds eerily similar to things that my co-panelist has described. And so the key is just getting engaged. I mean, getting engaged, getting your neighbor engaged, going to just anyone, just like you were challenging everyone to, what are you doing about gun violence? Maybe the question is, are you going to vote? You know the deadline is coming up to register. Are you registered?
Rochelle or Heather?
I was going to say, I think this all connects. You just mentioned, we just had a great conversation about gun violence and the causes and where it is, and we're going to talk more about other issues, but I really feel like in terms of making sure that we get the best opportunity with this democracy, I mean, America is still, it's a fantastic country. There's privilege here that other countries just don't experience. But I do think as African Americans, we face a lot of challenges. And so, in order to really keep trying to make progress, I really think we have to commit ourselves to saying, okay, if it is hard to get an ID, if it is hard, if the voting rules change constantly, what am I doing in terms of that system? Am I talking to everyone that I know about that? If I already got my DC, registration voting card, that's great. But then I also called my parents and said, have you gotten your card? Do you plan to vote? Do you need me to drive you? There are things that I can do to make sure that, everyone that I know, everyone that's related to me is able to have the best experience as possible.
I agree. I believe it's all about educating yourself and educating others. Being aware of your surroundings and who you can go to. A lot of times people don't know what they don't know. And if you do know something, it's important for you to share what you know, because for me, when I first moved to DC, I didn't even realize there was such a thing called an advisory neighborhood commissioner. It was going to meetings and speaking to people and introducing myself to everybody that I realized that just one question can turn into a lesson or an act or a resolution for my neighborhood. And I know there is a hopeless hope gap, but I'm hoping that there will be a hopeful bridge, and by continuing to be aware of your surroundings and to educate yourself.
Let me also say this. How do we include people of color who feel like the system has defeated them and has not been helpful to them being successful? I'll give you a perfect example. In Chicago, some communities, Austin, Inglewood, North Lawndale, Roseland, Alton Gresham, per capita, $11,000. And when they look at the lawmakers and the people who are making policy for them, they don't look like us at this table. And so how do we get more young people involved to be policy thinkers and think makers, to be at the table? Because policy is not a sexy conversation. It's not something, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of research. But how do we change that conversation and that dialogue? And I think that's very important, because until we change the policies, we're just really spinning our wheels.
Well, thank you. Well, one of the things that I've noticed in just being familiar with the history of the civil rights movement, familiar with my family's involvement with civil rights, and my access to what I'm doing today, is that they believe that there was a possibility for change. And in my experience with young people today, they do feel like they're disconnected from the process, and their one vote doesn't matter. And so I think it really we really have to go to the root of the problem, because even if we, and I've said it does matter, what you do, it does affect me, and I do need your energy to be positive for me to continue to do what I'm doing in my life. But I think it starts at the root that they have to believe that they are, can be a part of the process. Now, how we get them to believe that when there are statistics that show that there's evidence that people that don't want that for them, or the politicians are not adhere to the things of our community. So we have to help them to believe that they can make a difference. I mean, we just have to get to that place of hope. And I know it's a kind of a cliche-ish word, but I think it drives so much of everything. The gun violence, educational system demanding more. And I know in my community where I live, one of the things that I noticed, and I live in a nice community, and I noticed the school systems there, the schools are horrible looking. Just driving down the street, I'm offended, and my children are long since been in school. And so what I've decided to do is become a part of the solution, and realizing that even though my kids aren't there, there are other kids that are in my community that need to be able to walk to school. And you know, there's a community connection from just walking to school with your teammates and your classmates, so to speak. And so that's what I've decided to do. And it's hard, even in that community, and we are okay, well-to-do community, and the people there feel that they're not going to do anything. And these are educated people making, you know, well off and doing well for themselves, and they feel like they are disengaged in the process. So they have to believe that that there is a future and they can be a part of it.
Thank you.
Also, yeah. I was gonna say, I don't know, is Rashad about to speak?
Go ahead, Heather.
Yes.
Okay.
No, I was gonna pivot to you because I think media can really play a big role in how people perceive getting involved in the process. I've gone to, you know, thousands of schools at this point, and talked to a lot of young people who don't feel engaged in the system, but it's often they don't understand the system. When I worked directly for President Obama, a lot of times people were really frustrated about what he did or what he did not do, and he would quite often say to me, you know, do they really understand, though, what my limitations are? You know, and I'd say no. You know, a lot of people don't understand the role of the Congress, the role of agencies, the role of the Supreme Court, and these things constantly come up, but we've got to start thinking about creative ways so that people understand it.
Yeah, it has to be a full court press. We have to educate young people. We have to inspire young people. We have to break down the system, young people. We have to own our own political action committees. Like, it has to be everything. You know, again, going back to New York and Chicago in particular, and I'll talk about Baltimore. Me and my friends, after Freddie Gray was killed, we raised $10,000 in 48 hours to go down to West Baltimore and help the community out down there. We thought we were doing like some really good work. We're proud of ourselves, coming out, handing out products and stuff. And when we walked into the Gilmore homes where Freddie Gray was from, where the number one thing women were asking for were for their women's health products. And we're walking and we're giving them products, and we're watching lead peel down from the ceiling. We're watching kids outside almost get hit by cars because there are no speed bumps. We're watching as the one small corner store that actually had fresh food was burnt down. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait, this is a bigger conversation in a Democratic city. Being from New York, a Democratic city with a Democratic mayor and a Democratic governor, and with where black folks go out and vote. And I see what happens when we're talking about criminal justice and education, affordable housing in New York. We look at Chicago, a Democratic city where the mayor hid the tapes of Laquan McDonald getting murdered. So, and again, where black folks are, you know, voting in large numbers. So when young people see that, it's like, how can I be excited? How can I be engaged? So we have to put the full court press on to say, this is, like, we cannot give up. We have to keep pushing. We have to find creative ways for them to understand how the system works, like what you talk about, like Congress's powers and like how committees work, and like we have to get on that granular level with young people. But I honestly believe, like, you know, I look at it, it's like money. I know that's one of the questions we're going to talk about, but money runs this system, man. Like, that's just the way it is. And so we have to figure out, how do we get into that game as well. I think we have to push the voting, we have to push policy, but we have to put just as much power behind political action committees and actually picking the candidates, not just putting money behind whoever's running. Like, we need to start training, educating, and funding the candidates that we believe in, that we know that we can hold accountable.
And if I can add something to that, I mean, I do feel like two parts. One, these folks are not engaged, and that is, I hope it's not strategic, but it's a very real thing. And through our campaign work, we found we didn't need any like amazing messaging. We didn't need like that perfect flyer or this awesome T-shirt or a celebrity. We just need to talk to these people. You know, we need to talk to voters, especially like young voters and African American voters. On an Uber ride home yesterday, we got in this big debate about, you know, how horrible the presidential candidates were. And he has some really great points. But I asked him, well, when you plan on voting, you know where to vote? He said, oh, well, yeah, man, I didn't even think, yeah, I'm gonna vote. I think I need to update it, da-da-da. And so what we find through all these campaigns is that a lot of these people really just need to be directly engaged. And that is not happening in a lot of these campaigns and a lot of our efforts. You know, I love media, and I think media is important, but we typically look to that as to be the solution. We pour billions of dollars into television ads and digital ads and Facebook ads. And raise your hand if you actually pay attention to that. 2, 3, 4. So what is that, like 8% of this room, some of the most engaged people in politics, actually paying attention to that? So think about someone who's just scanning their Instagram or just going on Facebook to watch, you know, Allen Iverson Hall of Fame speech. They're not clicking the Donald Trump button. They're not clicking the Hillary Clinton button. But if you sit down and actually talk to them one-on-one, that's where the conversation changes. One last thing I want to share. We did a focus group in 2014. We took disengaged low-income white voters, disengaged low-income black voters. And I want to share this with you. So we asked the white voters, you know, what do you think about presidential politics? How do you feel about Barack Obama? You know, what do you think about Obamacare, health insurance reform? They didn't know the difference, by the way. They didn't know what Obamacare and health insurance reform, they didn't know it was the exact same thing. We asked them, well, how do you feel about the person who could have beat Barack Obama? It took these folks 15 minutes to remember who Mitt Romney was, like his name. 15 minutes. And then we asked them, do you plan on voting? Oh yeah, I'm voting right here this time. I vote here all the time. Me and Jimbo, we go there, right? We did the group, same financial bracket, similar community, rural African American voters. We asked them, what was Michelle wearing at the inauguration? They knew that, right? Where's Barack Obama's mama from? Kansas. Oh, we know that. Oh, Malia, Sasha, what do you think? Well, they cool, but I like the dog. You know, they knew all these details about Barack Obama's life like it was a television series. And then we asked them, do you plan on voting? Where are you going to vote? They just had not thought about it, didn't have a clue. Oh, I got to Google it. I got to look it up. I got to update my voter registration. And the point is, what we're seeing with disengaged voters, when you think about whites and blacks, white folks vote like they brush their teeth, right? We vote when we're inspired and when someone tells us and takes us there and there's some message, right? And a lot of that is what we're seeing in the culture. And we got to shift that. And I think the way that we shift it is by creating systems and programs and organizations where we're just talking to people directly about the importance of voting and making that plan. Because I think that cultural difference is what's hurting us, and we don't have to overthink it. We just need to figure out ways to talk to people one-on-one more.
Let's go to Rochelle and then Bacarra.
I also think that people have to understand how it connects to them and their story. So during a commission meeting, there are several people interested in funding a basketball camp. I'm like, let's start a committee, let's talk about it. It doesn't have to be at this meeting, it could be a one-off, but I want you to pull ideas. I want you to tell me how you feel about starting this basketball camp. I want you to, I'm not gonna give you the answers because I will help advise you on how you can get those answers, but I'm not gonna give it to you if you really want it. And it's important for people to listen to someone's story and then connect the pieces that way. That's how people become more engaged, that I've found. It's really just figuring out what that person wants and how it fits into the larger story and how you can help them get there, especially if you know the ins and outs of politics and the ins and outs of the media. Connecting the story for them and helping them to understand that it doesn't have to end at that street or community. They can go further. Yeah.
Bacarra, close out.
All right. So I wrote down 4 quick points in response to your question. Okay. Point 1, we need to step up. We need people that look like us to run for office. We need to step up and support them when they run for office. We need to put our arms around them as a community and help them so that we do have people to look up to us, people that can identify with our struggles and with our issues. Point two, we need to step out of our comfort zone. Each one, reach one, teach one, take them to the poll. We need to step outside our comfort zone. Point three, we need to take a stand. If we don't like something, we need to let people know we don't like this, or we understand that you're trying to play games at the poll, and we know that this is not right, and take a stand and not be able to do that. The last point is stay the course. What I find is that a lot of people, they will go out and protest. And quick story, I was in New York City when the non-indictment came down in the Eric Gardner case. I went into the Hard Rock Cafe, normal day in Times Square, and I came out and I thought I was in the middle of a war zone, just that fast. So for that whole weekend, everybody protested, walked around New York, shut down the Brooklyn Bridge, all of that, but they didn't stay the course. The Voting Rights Act didn't come out the day after Bloody Sunday. I mean, it takes years of taking a stand sometimes. And I think sometimes I'm on the upper end of young people, but sometimes we want it now, we want it today, but we need to understand that take a stand, but stay the course. Don't do it for a week, don't do it for a month, don't do it in 2016, just 2016 till November the 8th and stop on November the 9th. You got to keep going.
I'm gonna let Rashard, because I know this is very important, so go ahead.
Sorry, super fast. As a 29-year-old, I'm going to defend young folks just a second. I think a lot of us look at the civil rights movement with a lot of nostalgia. Only 11% of black folks were actually involved in the day-to-day struggle during the height of the civil rights movement. So there are young folks that, since Trayvon Martin, that have been incredibly engaged, from the Dream Defenders. You look at BYP in Chicago. I can name a ton of organizations that have been doing incredible work. Even the folks in Ferguson that are still pushing every single day to make that city a better place. In New York, we have the Justice League and a ton of organizations that are doing great work there as well. So yes, when something happens, you'll have like a week or two of people coming out in the streets, tens of thousands of folks shutting things down. But when that dissipates, there are a lot of young people that are still engaged in the system. I want us to work better together, I'll tell you that much. And some of the egos, we could talk about that too. But there are, a lot of young folks that are committed to it. I think BYP was just on the Hill doing a lobby day earlier this week, pushing for some really specific legislation. So, and Revolt, we covered it. We'll have a piece out about that later on this weekend. So there are folks that are doing that work. We need more of it, but I want us to always just be very balanced when we have these conversations about the civil rights movement and where we are today with BLM.
And also I want to say, when it comes to activism, there's always something fruitful that comes out of activism, right? So in Chicago, when Laquan McDonald got killed, what came out of that was our current state's attorney lost her race. Yep. And Kim Foxx is an African-American woman, won that race because activists got behind her and said, we want her to be our next state's attorney. The next thing was the superintendent of the police department left. And so now we have an African-American superintendent, Eddie Johnson. And the third piece is that the mayor had to begin to open up, and videotapes had to start coming out. And so now in Chicago, when someone gets killed by the police department, they have to release those tapes. And I think they have 30 to 60 days. So some great things came out of it. So we're going to move forward. The presidential cycle has highlighted some of the general anxieties that Americans have with both primary and general election practices, specifically the influence of donors and the impact of big money. We are constantly hearing buzzwords in relation to candidates like donors, Wall Street bankers, pay-for-play, and fundraisers. Please give some general comments on the impact of money on the election process. Now, I was always taught in politics, money to politics is like blood to your heart. Without it, you can't function. And that is the reality. But the other reality is that we are seeing a lot of super PAC money that is coming in, and we don't know where this money is coming from. It's coming from very dark spaces, and these are multi-billionaires who are dumping hundreds of millions of dollars into these elections. And so what happens is someone like Ms. Durant might want to run for office, and she's capable of running for office, but quite frankly, the person who she might be running against might have so much money that it just smothers her. So how do we change that conversation? I'll start with you, Mr. Durant.
Well, that's a good question, and I'd like to know how you do that too, because one of the things that, and I'm into politics, and I've watched our local elections and school board elections, and even our town elections. I watched those. The local mayor where I grew up, I was a part of that, and so I really can't answer how we do that, because they get the advertising space, they get the space to be notarized, and they kind of pummel the market with themselves. So that question is a question that I would like to know, because if I do decide to run, I don't have the super PAC behind me, and so I don't know. But one of the things, they just have to continue to be engaged, but that's a question I just can't answer that for you. I'm not sure how to do that.
And let me also be honest, this is not just a Republican thing.
Right.
This is a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Independent, Green Party. Everybody's involved in this.
Well, I know, like, once Citizens United came down, the Supreme Court case that basically opened this all up, we saw where, elections started going into the billion-dollar, right, national elections. They're spending all of this money. And it was ironic because, in 2008, 2009, our country was in a recession. But yet so much money was poured into our national election. You saw even more money spent in 2012, and you'll see again in 2016. But this is something that's right now just part of the construct of our election system. It's not going to change until we get the right people in office, which is another reason why we have to vote in this upcoming election, who care about these issues. You have to write your congressman and tell them, look, this is an issue. I want to see this system changed. It has to happen on a national level, because that's where it started. And then another thing what you can do is maybe talk to some of these companies. We are all consumers out here, and consumers can influence what companies do. So, Georgia Pacific, I could name a ton of companies, I won't, but there's a lot of companies, from people who make, paper towels, to the people that make the paper, the pens that we use, the water that we drink. They all influence these things. And once they feel like a consumer has an issue with something, that will shift what they do. And so this is a lot of work, and I know all of us all have full-time jobs, families, but I always encourage people, just think about one thing that fires you up. It could be, the fact that there's no speed bump in your neighborhood, right? Or it could be this whole election process and the money that's involved in it. Take that issue and run with it. But you have to do the right kind of research around the issue. You have to start writing the right people, demanding the right type of things from these companies.
I work for a super PAC.
Well, I was gonna say one quick thing. I mean, but the beautiful thing on the flip side that I do like is that, especially with the election of President Obama, I mean, he made it possible for individuals, for just average citizens, to contribute to a presidential campaign in the masses and make a difference. Before the election of President Obama, I mean, really, if you didn't have at least $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, you didn't get a postcard in the mail, or anything. But now, and even now, I mean, I don't know if y'all get the emails. I get the emails, this candidate is having a great day. Why don't you contribute $1? I mean, and you didn't see that, and that was unprecedented. And I think it's really a beautiful thing, because I think when you invest in something, whether it's $10 or 10 cents, you care about it. You pay more attention to it. You buy into it. And so I think that's really kind of changed the way we operate in politics by doing that.
I was just going to say, I don't know how much I can actually say to keep my job, but it's real. And I think people really need to take some time to understand how the new campaign structure works. So super PACs and independent expenditures are huge, especially on the Republican side. Most of these organizations have upwards of $50-60 million they're pouring into electing specific candidates. They can't coordinate with that candidate, they can't work with that candidate directly, but they have an unlimited amount of money they can put into it, whether it's knocking doors, sending television ads, sending mailers. I mean, and what's funny, there's if you guys listen to podcasts, you should listen to Radio Lab, there's one on there, I think it's called Debatable. Oh man, I'm gonna figure out the name of it, but you should look it up. And basically they go through the day in the life of a donor, a super PAC donor on the Republican side. And it's crazy, I think there's 10 of them that live on the same street. Donald Trump, all the presidential candidates flew in and sat down and had coffee and lunch with all of these folks to fight for their money. And you know, if they like this person, they'll turn around and drop $10-20 million, you know, behind them. And that is a real environment that we're up against right now. I think we saw through Bernie Sanders and Barack Obama that, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win the election if you take all this big money. But it is a real challenge and a real flip of the coin. What I will say is that on the Democratic side, there are super PACs forming, and I don't think PACs should always be seen as a negative thing. The one I'm a part of, it's composed of labor unions. So these are folks who already invest, already give funds, who already are the working class folks, but they decided, hey, let's just come together, pool our resources together, and fight behind candidates together. And I think on the Democratic side, we got to do that more with our organizations, our companies, especially our black-owned businesses. They should be coming together to fight for specific candidates, right? Some of these large corporations that fight for progressive values, they should be coming together and pour their resources behind specific candidates. So I think Democrats, you know, we don't like it, so we're kind of behind it a little bit, behind the curve. But I think if this is the game we're going to play, then we got to learn how to play it. And we can't fight it until we can change the law. And unfortunately, building this IE independent expenditure side is going to be required to get some of the folks elected to change the law. So I'm not a big fan of it, but I see how it works, and I'm just trying to get ahead of it and learn it.
Rochelle?
I agree. Super PACs can be a great thing, but I think my biggest concern with them is that not everybody knows that it can be a great thing, and just understanding what goes into making a super PAC and the influence that it can serve that $1. So if you give that $1, I kind of want to know where that dollar went. I want to know where each quarter went, actually. Like, I want to know how it influenced my neighborhood. I want to know which school light it helped to put on. Like, I want to know where my dollar went. And I don't think that wraparound loop close happens very often, and learning exactly where you fit in the big picture is missing with that question, like understanding that question or answering it.
And I think I have to agree with Gregory. If this is going to be a part of the game that we're playing, then we need to be aggressive. Yeah. And the reality is that some of the members of Congress and senators and others, they make calls on weekends, right? They make calls on Saturday mornings. They make calls on Sunday mornings. Other elected officials tend to say, no, I don't want to bother someone on a Saturday morning. I don't want to bother someone on a Sunday morning. But the reality is that we have to raise money. And we have to come up with unique, strategic ways of raising money. We cannot continue to do cocktail events where the same checks are being passed around in a circle. It's the same money. How do we reach out to a younger audience? How do we reach out to young professionals? How do we reach out to athletes? How do we reach out to actors, whomever it may be, who will be able to get behind the cause? Moving on to the next question. Both major political parties have endured criticism on how they approach the African American electorate, treating us as a monolith. We all know that within our community we have many different opinions and concerns that vary across individuals. How then do we collectively exert influence on candidates and the national agenda? Ms. Durant?
Well, what I think we need to do is, the way I've looked at it before is that there was a collective positioning that we had in the black community during the civil rights movement. Pretty much everyone got behind Martin Luther King, who believed in nonviolence, and those who got behind Malcolm X. And I think what we need to do now is we need to find the issues that we need to compromise on, and we say that we're going to go down this road together. And as we go down this road and we find the issues that we value, and sometimes we have to tweak and make it a little better here and there, but we need to come together collectively. And I think that's when the political parties, whichever ones they are, will recognize that we have a powerful voice, but we have to come together a little more. I think it's important that we have to follow the same agendas and realize that our separate goals individually really shouldn't be as important as they are nowadays. And I think that's what should take place.
Just quickly, I mean, I think we talk a little bit about money, but I think we as a community have an extremely strong buying power, and we're not investing that from a political standpoint. And I think that's a huge thing that we can start to push is say, you know, I got to do a quick plug. There's a new PAC called The Collective.
Yeah.
You guys all heard of The Collective? Okay.
Found a member.
Good, me too. Yeah. Well, I knew you. But The Collective is one of those PACs that's is purely black oriented. The concept is to get black folks behind black candidates. And I think showing our power beyond just that one vote is going to be critical because unfortunately, you know, African Americans are Democrats, right? The huge percentage of us are Democrats. And the candidates know that. The parties know that. Republicans aren't going crazy fighting for black votes right now, right? They're going to do enough to kind of, you know, keep the course and make sure they don't look, you know, a certain way. But they're not pouring thousands of dollars into inner city areas or African American communities to get them to turn out to vote or persuade them our way. They know that. They're not fighting for our vote necessarily, but they will fight for our dollars. And we have to figure out a way to bring some power behind that by pooling those resources together and showing that we will make political decisions with our dollars as needed. And we've done that a little bit through our boycotts and our protests, but we got to take it to the next level and pull that behind candidates as well.
But let me ask this, how do we do that when a person like Colin Kaepernick comes out and says, I'm not standing up for the national anthem, and then he gets his endorsements pulled from him, right? So, and then now that leaves a very big hole in his bank account, right? Because he stood for something that he believed in. And the reality is those corporations that pulled that from him were white corporations, right? So how do we make sure if that happens, then some of our black businessmen who have been very successful in business say, hey, guess what? They got pulled from and we're going to support it. Sort of like what Russell Simmons just did.
Yeah. So those, I didn't know Colin Kaepernick had his.
I think it was Marshall.
Yeah, Brandon Marshall. Brandon Marshall had a credit union that was sponsoring him, pulled away, and then Russell Simmons came and gave him a sponsorship with the Rush card. And that's how we win, right? Or the fact that Colin Kaepernick had the 20th selling jersey for the 49ers, now has the #1 selling jersey in the NFL. So people have spoken very clearly about where they stand on this issue. Like the hashtag Veterans for Kaepernick was amazing. I don't know if everyone saw that, like on Twitter. So I think folks we can support things, but I'm happy when we talk about boycotting. Like, I love my people, but man, our discipline is so bad. Like when we try to get black folks not to shop on Black Friday. Oh, it was, Rochelle did an incredible job trying to put that together and like, and just talking to folks that are like, well, I gotta go get my TV. So it's like, how do we find that discipline? Like when we talk about, the Montgomery bus boycott, where folks literally stayed off buses for a year. Like, how do we, I know there are a lot of organizations that put together like black-owned business websites and where people can go. Like, how do we get that stuff to the forefront, right? So I think those are the campaigns that Revolt and other organizations should really look at trying to push, and figuring out how do we get our folks to be disciplined when we're moving in one direction. But I think with stuff like Colin Kaepernick is a great example of where people have spoken. So like the NFL, and sponsors. They know, like, the 49ers were talking about cutting Colin Kaepernick. They knew if they touched the hair on that man's head, that folks would have been out. And so I think that's where we show our power in moments like that.
And I think that's where the importance of a collective agreement comes in. Okay, so some of us may not agree with his not saluting the flag, but still as a community we come together because we know the issue that he's fighting for is something that we all say we want. And so we have to say, okay, well, I may not agree with how you're doing certain things, but I'm going to get behind you, and then let the endorsers know, okay. And I think the Beats dropped somebody too. Well, we're not buying Beats anymore, and as a community we're going to say we're not going to buy Beats anymore. And I think that's how we have to come together collectively. I think that's really important that we do that, even if we differ in the nuances of an issue.
And even if we're showing our buying power. I don't think boycotting has to always be the strategy, right? That's a great strategy, but there's also a strategy that's happening in the Austin community, and some of the black business owners are here from Chicago, is that they're rallying and supporting a black business owner in a particular area. Everybody go to that particular black business and support it. Let's buy everything off the shelves. That's a way of supporting it, right? So we don't have to boycott everything, but we can show a different way of supporting our black business owners. And I think that if we took that same strategy nationwide, if we said, hey, take our money, you don't take all your money, but take a portion of your money and put it in a black bank, right? It's happening in Chicago right now. You know, they're putting their money in Seaway, they're putting it in ISF. Then that's a way for us to begin to build our own capital. Because until we build our own capital, we're going to be relying on others. And as long as we're relying on others, we're at the detriment of others.
That's all it comes down to.
Absolutely. This is going to be the last question, then we're going to open it up to the public. Let's see, which one do I want to pick? I think I want to pick this one. How can you bring individuals into the fold? No, that we talked about that one. Let's do this one. Increasingly, millennials are demonstrating a stronger commitment to service and volunteering than previous generations. However, as their penchant for volunteerism grows, there's a decline in the sense of civic duty in comparison to the older generations. What accounts for the disparity?
One of the things I think is a part of it is the communication gap between the generations. And and I must say that, and I'm still a young person, but I'm on the other end of it. I'm going to get into the other line. But one of the things I realized, and I was one of those older women who felt that young people, like these young people, I'm tired of these young people, they're doing too much. And until I began to work with young people, I am really impressed by them. They have a resilience and a fearlessness that I just did not have as a young person. And so once we begin to communicate with them on a different level of appreciation, I think that's when they'll become engaged in the things that we pass down to them. And until we learn to communicate with them openly and honestly and transparently, I think that's our problem as the previous generations. And one of the speeches that I give during Black History Month is the importance of sharing our personal history and connecting with them. And the previous generations found a way to communicate with me. And so I have to find a way to communicate with the young people. Yes. That's what I think we need to focus on, one of the things.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think there's a gap where you talk about civic engagement versus volunteerism. I think there's a gap that people don't believe that the system works, so they find other ways to help the homeless or to, go and build a school in Haiti or wherever it may be, because they know, like, all right, I could go and vote, which is, we're telling people to do that. But if I want to really touch the change that I want to see, I can go raise money and go to West Baltimore and give, so people find their own avenues to create change. But and I also think to the older folks, I think the generation before this one is the one that really dropped the ball. The generation between the civil rights movement and the millennial generation really dropped the ball. There was a very, but maybe not you, but the folks.
I know there were a couple of
folks in your
generations
group.
there.
I think there was a ball drop. There became a
That's
very
true,
much
though.
I'm gonna get mine. I think coming out of the civil rights, it was like, once we started seeing integration of different communities and folks were starting to get those board positions and moving into C-suites, it was like, I have to go get mine. I think that's where we saw a big disconnect. Like there's the gap from like the 70s to like the late 80s, early 90s where that happened. And so I think that's where a lot of the problems with the communication gap comes from. So when folks are like, well, young folks don't do this, that, and the other, I'm like, yeah, well, y'all left us with this crate where students went from going to college, was $8,000 when you were there. It's $49,000 now that I'm going. Yes, I do want to get that job and move up within 3 years. Yes, I want to switch around so I can be able to pay off Sally Mae so she doesn't come and take my house from me. Or forget that, I'm living in my mama's basement, so I don't have a house that she can even take. So it's like, I think we have a lot of different struggles that I think, that previous generations maybe don't grasp. But I think there should be an allowance to understand why we are the way we are. And the fact that we do get this, this is a selfish generation, the selfie generation. I'm like, to your point, we volunteer more than anybody. we are out there, trying to make a difference more than anybody. So I think that's the narrative that we need to hear more from.
Now, Rashad, I'm gonna be a devil's advocate,
Please.
right?
It's my favorite
I
role.
believe that this millennial generation is what I call a microwavable society. They want self-gratification like that.
Yeah, because we're broke.
Well, whatever the reason may be, right? If I'm an activist, I want somebody to put me on in front of a TV station right away. And I want to be on that TV station. I want to be in front of that camera because that's self-gratification. I want to be on social media because that's self-gratification. Hip-hop, right? I'm about to touch on a subject that me and you might. But if we look at hip-hop right now, hip-hop is all about money. A lot of people are talking about self-gratification, money, cars, clothes, and jewelry. Where is the education in this? Where is the public enemy? Where is the self-education of building our communities up? Because right now, and I love hip hop.
It's okay.
Right? But I'd rather listen to Chance the Rapper than listen to Lil Uzi or whoever it may be. Because I feel like Chance the Rapper has got a message. And so I'm saying that to say, how do we look at it and say, hey, we all are in this together. We all got to bridge that gap like Ms. Durant said. We need the older generation. We need the younger generation. We need the middle generation. We need everybody to work together. Until we get that and understand that, we're going to see us clashing all the time.
So two quick points, and then I'll pass the mic. The first, I think the instant gratification, if you look at Ferguson, I say I like instant gratification. I like the fact that after Mike Brown was killed and the city rose up, that they turned around the city council the next cycle. I like the fact that after they turned up, that the DOJ was in there within weeks and had a report the next year, within months, suing the Ferguson Police Department. So I like that. I think that, when we talk about the civil rights movement, there was we can't wait. That was one of the King's things. We can't wait. We're not waiting any longer. We're not walking anymore. We're running. We are running through walls. LBJ, I'm not waiting for you to pass your war on poverty. I'm not waiting for that. We need voting rights now. So I think that, again, we have to. There are some parallel paths between how King moved and how Malcolm moved and Garvey moved and Fannie Lou Hamer. She's like, I don't want just one seat. I want us to be integrated into the Mississippi Democratic Party that's being seated at the convention. Moving to hip hop, my baby. Chance the Rapper is hip hop. Kendrick Lamar is hip hop. J. Cole is hip hop. So there is an incredible conscious thread within the music. People were walking down the streets of Chicago, shutting down those stores, singing "We Gonna Be All Right," which is Kendrick Lamar's track off of his last album. You had "Be Free" after Mike Brown was killed, which J. Cole created as a song that people were playing in the streets of Ferguson. "Glory," which when we were walking down the streets to the UN, where we were bringing human rights violations from the NYPD to the United Nations. We played that on repeat, going from Harlem to the UN. So hip hop has, I think, been incredibly involved in this moment, in this movement. Yes, just like they had "Let's Get It On." We have Lil Uzi Vert. Yes, like every generation has their version.
That's what my daughter listens to.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. But every generation has their version of Ratchet. Yeah. So every generation has a soundtrack. So funny. I talk to older people. They make it sound like everybody that was in the '60s and '70s had good music. Y'all had some whack artists, and you had some craziness, going on in there too. So I think hip hop has always been a genre of aspiration. So yes, there is, when you're coming from Bankhead, Georgia, you want to move to Buckhead, there is a certain type of music that you're talking about. But I look at Tupac, we just commemorated, 20 years of him losing his life. Like all of us, we're complex. right? Like some of his music was crazy, but then he also had some inspiring tracks and some inspiring words. And so like I think we have to always look at hip hop in that lens. And so I think, you know, hip hop, I always say, is a mirror. So they reflect the times, they reflect what we're talking about. So the more and more we're in this moment of Black Lives Matter, the more and more we're in this moment of wokeness, you're gonna see that reflected in the music. And I think you see that in the artists. So like, you know, let's look at the entire mosaic of hip hop and, you know, and appreciate for what it is.
We got time for one more comment. Anyone?
Oh, I was just gonna say really quickly, I don't think we can also put all of our, you know, effort into being upset about the artist, right? Like, I feel like just like all the athletes, if you've noticed with Colin Kaepernick, you've seen a variety of athletes have a different response. Some are gonna respond positively, some are not. Same thing with music. Some people are gonna use their music to send a message. Some people know that people just wanna get crunk, you know? And so I think like, we can't always put the pressure on one entity. I think if we connect these entities together, right? You do have some athletes who are gonna step out. You do have some artists who are gonna make good music, some actors, some investors. I mean, it's a wheel. Like, we only make that change when all the spokes are doing something. So I don't think we can lean on one, you know, genre and just expect them to uphold everything.
I agree.
And I think we need to try to come up with a collective agenda as a people, and that we all can rally behind, whether we're 100% behind it or 25% behind it. If we think it's going to benefit us as a people and as a community, we need to come up with that. So that's one of the things that we could come up with a hashtag or something, get something started. Like, what are we going to do as a people, as a whole, that we can all rally behind, and then we can affect the advertisers, the super PACs. We can add to a super PAC that's very valuable in our community. So I think we need to come up with a collective agenda that's going to affect all of us.
I love it. This is time where we open it up to comments to the individuals who are attending, and you just come up to the microphone and ask your question, and the panelists will answer.
How you doing? Isaac Ricard, Texas Bigger Better Business Director of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Quick question. First of all, thank you for your comments. I really do appreciate them. I participated in the boycotts during Black Friday. I, as a former employee, I'm now a real estate agent, can tell you that being in the halls of corporate America and seeing all the things that happen between Baton Rouge and Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I lived for 4 years, being directly connected and boycotting and so forth becomes a challenge. One, it becomes a challenge because we lack infrastructure within our communities. The bus boycott that happened many years ago, we created our own transportation systems. When it comes to boycotting places like Target Corporation, years ago we had stores that supplied those products. We don't have these things anymore. I really like the last thing that you said, because it's really spoke to coming together and creating a narrative from an economic standpoint, also from an advocacy standpoint, to really supply these things for ourselves so we can actually hit the communities hard. So my question is, and I have ideas too, but I really want to hear from you all. What does it take to get your various organizations to come together, and rather than go on social media and say, hey, let's boycott Black Friday, say, yes, we're going to boycott Black Friday. These are alternatives in your area. I really want to hear that from you all.
I would say this, and I'm going to start off and I'll let it go down, whoever. I always say to people, there's gangs in everything, right? There's gangs in the streets, there's gangs in clergy, there's gangs in politics, there's gangs in business people, right? Everybody wants their own territory. And I think that Ms. Durant said it best, is that until the African American community comes together with one holistic plan of what we want to see for our community, we're going to continue to be segregated, right? And so I would like to see us come with one plan as an African American community and present it to our particular presidential candidates. This is what our plan is, whether it's for ex-offenders, whether it's for businesses, whether it's for communities throughout, urban communities in Chicago, Atlanta, Baltimore, We need an investment from the federal government, because everything starts with the top and it comes down, right? Communities that have been suffering from poverty, we need an investment. We need people to come in, we need agencies to come in and talk about trauma, because the black community is suffering from trauma right now, mental health. And until we take care of those issues, we're going to continue to suffer. We have to heal first before we can move forward.
And I agree with that, and I think the agenda that I spoke of earlier, it's going to take some time for us to come together to do that, because we're going to have to iron out all of our issues. Personally, Kaepernick, I didn't even know who he was. I'm really not a football player, but because he has brought this issue to the forefront, I like it. I don't think the flag has anything to do with it, but that was his way, and that's fine, and I'm okay with that. But I think we need to really have a serious dialogue first, like you said, to kind of heal some of the issues that we deal with as a community, and then we have to agree that we're all going to agree. And we're going to agree to disagree, but this is what we're going forward with. And I think that's what we need to start.
And maybe that's what we use the next CBC conference for. You know, this is a platform, it brings so many elected officials to town. It's, you know, sponsored by members of Congress, like that. Maybe that's what we need to use this conference for.
I just want to respond quickly on infrastructure. I think you're definitely right. There's not a lot of infrastructure for us to do the things we want to do as a community, and I think that's something we can invest in very small ways. So we talked about black-owned businesses. There's an app called BOB Spotter. Does everybody have that? You can just search, hey, I'm here. Where are all the black-owned businesses in my neighborhood or in this street or in this area, right? So that's one infrastructure thing that everybody should have, and we should be sharing it and pushing it. I know personally, I've been really invested in the collective because I know that while we have, you know, a lot of African-American elected officials, we don't necessarily have people invested in creating a pipeline or training new candidates. We don't have people that are invested in financial side and the donation side and training people how to raise money. And that's precisely what the collective is trying to do on the black political scale. So that's another thing that I hope everyone will be involved with and invest in. The third thing, me and my friends, we created this little group me because we were like, hey man, we don't really use emails. We just text all the time. Why don't we just create a group me and so we can keep each other in tune? And we created, it was called The Wave, and it was really small at first. And now it's like 2,600 people in DC, and we have 600 people in Chicago. It's like exploded. And what we found out is that a lot of young African-American professionals, they don't even have a communication infrastructure to even tell each other what's going on other than Twitter. So we started that. Hopefully you'll join it. It's on GroupMe. But I think just thinking about where those gaps are that you're seeing, because you're in a unique place in Wall Street and knowing business and knowing where those shortfalls are, just start creating that infrastructure, because no one's going to do it if you don't do it. And unfortunately, we don't know we don't know. And you obviously have a skill set and you're plugged into a lot more conversation. So hopefully everyone's thinking like that. Like, what's missing in my community? What are people not doing, and how can I fill those gaps?
Another thing I think we need to place on the minds and hearts of our elected officials from the federal level all the way down, that we need more investment in small businesses and in businesses to provide African Americans and other minorities with the opportunity to start the business to help us create the infrastructure. That's one part, but the other part is we've just got to support those businesses. We've got to give them the support that they need to be successful so that we can help create the infrastructure. So it's kind of a twofold response.
And, you know, I disagree a little bit on the national agenda. I just think that, like, I'm just being realistic. We're not getting all the black folks together with one agenda, but I think the win is if I'm in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, I'm gonna get all the black folks in Crown Heights, Brooklyn to get behind the issues that we see within our community. So I think a block by block approach is, I think that's the biggest win. I think the problem we find a lot of times is that we always try to find that national and that federal solution, where I think the answer really is like, I always say, my favorite line is like, how do I make my block lit? Lit in the New York terminology for like popping. So it's like, yeah, exactly. So like that's why I always say, like, if everyone took that approach to how I make sure that my block has black businesses, that, you know, my block has affordable housing. I think if we all take that type of approach, I think that's where we could really find the change that we seek. But it really is like finding a need and filling it. Like when Quentin and Stephanie, who are the founders of the collective, we were talking for a long time about, money in politics. How do we make sure we're not just have a seat at the table, but as Hillary said this morning, I loved it, but we're leading the meeting, was to make sure that we were finding ways to finance candidates. And Quentin and Stephanie said, hey, Rashad, we're doing this. I said, say no more, I'm there. They found the gap and they filled it. So I think that's what we all have to find a way to do.
I think that hip hop, I love hip hop as well. I'm from New York, from the Bronx, where hip hop was born. But I think hip hop was one of the biggest products from the African American community. I think we can use it as a vehicle to make community involvement and civic engagement more relevant and more interesting. Bringing businesses to your community is something that usually happens on a local level. And talking to your elected officials, talking to or being involved in your civic organizations locally, it's all about finding the good information and finding out where and how to talk to these people. Most oftentimes they're approachable. And options, you have to give people good options and understand that not everyone learns in the same way. So there's different avenues that you can approach it. You can approach it through music, you can approach it through the arts, but building a collective has to have all of those different aspects in it: arts, music, sports, finance, and making sure that everyone is well informed to make whatever infrastructure that they make in their community the best that they can.
Go ahead, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Martin Hill. I'm the academics records manager at Clark Atlanta University by day, and at night I'm the director of outreach for Black Lives Matter Greater Atlanta, which is the first incorporated chapter of it. I have kind of a twofold question. One, shortly after the killing of Alton Sterling, I drove down to Baton Rouge and participated in a protest in March. And I know I heard you all speak earlier about just gathering people together and getting people a new sense of hope. But how do you give people who have been oppressed so much a new sense of hope when they're feeling like nothing's going to change? Black men are going to keep dying in the street as well as black women. No one's going to get prosecuted for it. Our kids, that young man, his son, crying on national TV because now we have another fatherless black child. That's one question. How do you get people, oppressed people, encouraged to actually get behind, all the things that we're trying to do? Because we all we're all trying to do one thing, but in a lot of different directions. Secondly, how do we protect our rights and become activists while maintaining our professional careers?
I'm doing that right now.
Yeah.
So on the first one, yesterday I went to get a haircut. Got a nice little temple fade. I live in Southeast DC, and I was sitting there getting my haircut, and this guy, he was talking to his two sons. And the kid was like, "Oh, I'm not having a good time. I'm not happy." And he replied, he was like, "Look, son, happy is when you pay all your bills and you got a couple dollars left. You should be happy you got this haircut." And they stormed out, and he was mad. And I was like, man, but for me, I think that spoke to kind of that a little bit of that lack of hope, right? Like if that is what happiness is to this father, and that's what he's teaching his son, and for everyone else or a lot of folks in the middle class, that's the basics that we have a really long ways to go. So I think that's a really hard question. Like if we had an answer to it, hopefully we wouldn't need a CBC conference, right? Everything would be moving and rolling. But I think it starts with, one, engaging people individually, which is not happening. You talk about gathering. People are not gathering. We're not coming together and talking. We're not talking about our issues. We're not working together at a very local level. We protest, we stand, we charge, we march, and then we go on about our ways. And that's even worse in communities that are being oppressed. So the first thing is engaging folks like you're doing by night. So thank you for doing that. Secondly, I think there's some serious basics that we got to work on around the economy, getting folks trained for jobs. In DC, I think for every one job for someone who does not have a high school degree, there's 7 people going for it, right? So the odds are already against you if you don't go through high school. So we got to figure out how do we get folks through school, train them for jobs that aren't necessarily being a professor or being in academics, and just getting the basics down, because there's a lot of folks who are struggling with just that basic need. And so when we're talking about aspirational policies and dreams and change the world and doing this and doing that, that father is just trying to figure out, how do I pay my bills? So I think we can focus and start there.
I wanted to tackle the second question, because that's a struggle that I dealt with a lot. It's like, how do you stay active, in activism, but also, maintain professionalism. And, I've been blessed enough that I've been able to find those convergence because of the job I do, right? So Revolt wasn't covering social justice, wasn't covering politics. We're mostly a millennial music and cultural network. But my argument was that our viewers, is like when Mike Brown's getting killed and Eric Garner's was killed, and like, this is what our viewers are talking about. This is what our social media is filled with. So we have to lean into that. And, lo and behold, here we are, in year 3. And, when Ava DuVernay and Ryan Coogler were looking to do a fundraiser for Flint, they called on us because of the work that we did around Baltimore and Ferguson and so on. And so, so I was able just to, in my role, raise my hand and say, I'll do the heavy lifting. I'll do the extra, work to get the social justice roundtables and reach out to the White House, and pushing different things. And so I tell people all the time, if you work at Facebook, you need to be involved in Facebook's, Facebook has a black group within the organization that's pushing for diversity and is pushing for more black hires. I always say, if you are not talking about hiring black folks, if you're not talking about creating jobs, then I don't know what you're talking about. Everyone needs to be talking about that and figuring that out. So a job opens up at your company, what are you doing to make sure that someone that fills that role looks like you? So I think that's where you find those type of convergence. And I don't know what you do, but we could talk afterwards. I'm happy to always help people to figure out different ways to make sure we're getting people into the right roles. And I think the hope gap that you're talking about, people that follow me on Facebook that are up here, they know this is all I talk about is economic power equals community power, which equals political power, which equals policy change. That's the key to everything. And I think we have to just keep hammering away at that. I agree with Heather, CBC next year, let's have every economic expert come in here and literally have workshops on helping people how to actually create businesses and create jobs. I think that's what it comes down to. Point blank, period.
I was just gonna say on the professional / balancing activism. I really think that, I tell a lot of people that there are so many ways that you can get involved, but you also have to really be realistic about your situation. So if you are at a job where you can't be online posting what you want to post, or maybe you can't take off to go do a march, there are other things that you can do. But I really try to stress to young people in particular that it's critical. If you know you have to get this college degree, you need to be in school and finish up that college degree. If that's what you need for your economic, because we won't be able to do anything if we're still not mobile, if we're still not moving through the system, if we're still not getting jobs, if you're still not paying your rent. There's a level of defeat that we will have if we don't get some more economic mobility in this country. So it's a tough balance, but I think you can find different times in your life where you can march, right? Or you can be active in the space if you want to be online, or you can join a movement. I encourage people all the time to do it, but also be realistic about what your situation is in life.
Also, let me share this. I think it's very important that we serve on boards, right? All of these major corporations, we should have someone of color serving on that board. And if we don't, we should take that as a smack in our face, that we don't have someone on that board. And we should force those companies to put someone on that board. Because what happens is, and let me also say this, we shouldn't just want somebody to be on the board. We should want somebody to be on that board working and then bringing resources back to our community. Because every corporation is supposed to be a good community steward. And they're supposed to be coming back to the community doing something in your community. Whether it's Baltimore, whether it's DC, whether it's Durant, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Atlanta, they should be giving something back to the young kids, whomever in that community. Charmaine Rickett from Uncle Remus from Chicago, step on up. You know I have to say your name, full name.
Hey, everyone. So basically, I've been listening, and I don't have a question. I have some comments, some thought comments. So part of our challenge is that we have so many small clusters. You know, we have Black Lives Matter, we have all of these movements in different cities. But if we think back and reflect back to the Dr. King days, we have to realize that that was a general. And the reason why the March on Selma and all of these things were successful is that we have many captains in all of these various cities, all of these various movements, but Dr. King was the general that really kept us on the same page. The reason why the boycott Black Friday, it got a lot of social media likes and shares, but it was not effective in the sustainability because the general is the leader who puts all of the captains on the same page. So when you think of Dr. King, the general, what came out of the general, you had a great statement that there was a gap, but he groomed Reverend Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Andrew Jackson. The general groomed the captains to go and spread, to stay on one page. Am I making any sense at all? Exactly. So all of these Black Lives Matter movements, all of the other movements in all of these various cities, in my opinion, who is the general that's leading to say, let's stay on the page, let's continue to make sustainability in all of the things that we're doing, because our dollars are powerful. We're $1 trillion race. We spend over $1 trillion. We all know that our dollar doesn't stay in our community within 2 hours. So when he made a reference to, in Chicago, I'm also a chairperson, I'm a business owner, so I understand the economics, and one of the solving problems is the economics, but I'm chairperson of AAABNA, which is Austin African American Business Networking Association. And we have established a very successful entity called Will You Come Have a Beer With Us? What is a beer? It's a Black Economic Empowerment Rally. So we are business owners that support business owners, and we have taken small businesses, because that's the first start, the small to grow up the larger businesses, and we take a Saturday and we buy everything. So we will put $1,500, $2,000, $2,300 in a small business in 2 or 3 hours, and then we track the sustainability of that. And then when I think about this young and powerful group, I'm definitely not in the young and powerful group. The age is not, what's the age thing? Can I join?
It depends.
It depends.
We can go all the way up to 50.
Young and spirit.
Okay, well, I'm still there.
But there,
So you fit within that age.
No, who is the, in my opinion, the millennials is the absolute answer, in a sense, to the next movement. But in my opinion, you need a general that's going to take the movement. It's a whole lot of captains, but where's the general so that we can stay on page?
I would love to tackle that really
So
quickly.
let's do this. We're going to give each panelist 30 seconds.
Cool.
Because we got to wrap it up.
So when King died, he was 39. He had the heart of, an autopsy, he had the heart of a 65-year-old man. If you read the book Death of a King by Tavis Smiley, it really goes into like how the depression and all the things he dealt with in the last year of his life. We look at what happened at SCLC. The moment he passed, SCLC fell apart. Fell apart because it wasn't built as an organization. Unfortunately, it wasn't built as an organization that could sustain the loss of its leader. And I think what the Black Lives Matter movement said, we're not going to let that happen. So it's purposely decentralized. You can't cut off a head. I remember there's one activist in particular that we're trying to get to be like the person. And I told him, like, bro, don't put that on that man. Are you kidding me? To have the FBI, destroying, pulling him down, to have them go after his organization and make it bankrupt, and like to go after everyone in his life, I would never put that on one person. So it has to be on all of us. So I think we all have to be the change that we're waiting for. And that's 30 seconds.
I need to disagree. Okay. Agree but disagree, because without vision and the leadership. I understand the concept, but where is the cohesiveness? Because social media is a powerful tool, and it's what most of us use. And we're only saying Black Lives Matter. We'll just use that as the reference because it is the most recognizable, named organization at this point. So they are making strides. But I still go back to, when you know better, you should do better. So in my opinion, you still need a general, but the vision can be cast so that we can be on the same page, because we're not on the same page. Maybe 4 or 5 cities, we didn't make the impact that we should have with the move. I don't know who started the Black Friday, don't shop on Black Friday, whatever the movements are, there's no centralized focus chain of information that is consistent to come out for it to be successful. That's my, if that makes any sense.
I'm okay with having different captains, and
so am
they
I.
have centralized focuses on different topics. So there's someone that will teach everyone about finance. Even in the 60s, NAACP, I think the general for law was Thurgood Marshall. Like, Martin Luther King didn't glean all of his information from himself.
Sure.
But someone to step up and be that spearhead, it's kind of difficult to do that in this day and age, and have FBI come after you, and you need it to be spread out so that you can, if someone goes down, someone else can just pop up in their place.
And we're on the same page, but I think we're not on the same focus. Someone is going to have the courage to be that person in order for the change to come. And I'm saying we know better, we do better. So you have that person, but yet you still have, I have four restaurants. I'm pretty smart, but I'm smart enough to know to surround myself with smarter people.
Absolutely.
So I'm building my empire. I'm ahead of the empire. I carry the weight, I carry the burden, I carry the ups, I carry the down. But I'm building an empire. And if we continue, in my opinion, in the focus of we have to have all of these captains and no general, we're still going to be spinning in a circle, because someone is going to have to just carry the mantle with to whom much is given, much is required.
One question.
So
Who do you think the?
time
I'm
for one
sorry.
more comment.
Who do you think the general is right
I
now?
have no idea. I have no idea. But there needs to be one person that continues to stay connected to the whole nucleus. But it has to be.
Trying to get my friends killed.
I don't know who they are, but it has to be someone. And that's an anointing, and that's a calling. But there's also the responsibility of it.
So let's close out with Ms. Durant.
But if not one person, maybe an organization.
Or it could be an organization,
And maybe we can learn from the failures of the past, when Martin Luther King Jr. died, when things kind of fell apart. So we can learn from that, and we can build upon that. But I think we are all on the same page and that's what we need to come together and continue the conversation, is how we do this. We know the what, when, and why, but we need to come together on the how.
Well, we need the solutions.
Yeah.
We already know the problems. We need to have solutions panels. What's the next panel?
I agree. So listen, we want to thank Young and Powerful Group. Please, everyone, clap it up for Young and Powerful Group. And we also want to thank all of our panelists for taking time out of their day to be a part of this. And we want to absolutely thank you all for being here. And finally, I would like to thank Kayla for putting this on. So clap it up.
Thank you, Kayla. Thank you.
And I hope everyone has a great CBC.
That's nice meeting you. And I went all over the